QuickBooks Online 2026. 4 ways to access the QuickBooks Online software. Get ready and some coffee because QuickBooks Online is even quicker to the trigger than Quick Draw McGraw. The first question we have, the first problem we face whenever trying to learn a new software is, how do we get access to the software? Which you might respond of, well, you buy it, of course. However, obviously, we would like to get access as cheap as possible and in a way that is as conducive to our learning as we can. Also, in a way that doesn't nuke or blow up our current data set in our current company file or the company file of our employer. So it's actually a much more complicated question than you might think of at first. We have a few different options that we could be practicing with. I want to go through them in detail, not jumping into any of these options, but analyzing them first so that however you're using this course, either as basically a start to finish, running through the entire thing, or as a piecemeal situation to try to learn the gaps that you have in your knowledge base, you know where to go for the best tool to be practicing with. Let's first list them out and then we'll go into in detail. We have a free 30-day trial period. We have the QuickBooks Online student trial. We have the free test drive. We have discounts on the purchase of the software. Let's go into each of these in more detail and think about how they would fit into our course and just your typical learning for whatever you're trying to do in general. First, we have the free 30-day trial. Now remember, there's two kinds of QuickBooks. You've got the QuickBooks Desktop, which is the older kind of version of QuickBooks that Intuit, the owner of QuickBooks, is trying to push away from, at least with the baseline model up to the standard small to mid-size model with the larger companies than possibly still using the desktop version in its more advanced version, which is the enterprise. We'll talk about that in more detail later. This course is primarily focused on the online version, for which you have different tiers, which again, we'll get into more detail later. But any of these tiers, you can basically get access then to a free trial. Now, as you do the free trial, note that QuickBooks is going to try to do the upsell. They're going to say, hey, look, do you really want to do a free trial? Because we'll give you the discounted or lower price if you just purchase it. However, if you're just trying to practice or you're just trying to test something out, you would like to be able to have the free trial period and not put your actual data into it. Because once you put your actual data into it, at least if you're not running it parallel to another software, it kind of locks you in. So just be aware that the 30-day trial clearly has a time limit of 30 days. The benefit of the 30-day trial is that hopefully you get a sandbox with nothing in it, which we will be using in the second half of the course when we start a project starting from scratch. Now that's different than a situation where you want to practice with some data that's already in the system. Those are our two primary kind of objectives, remembering that if you're going to work for another employer, then they are already going to have their QuickBooks file set up. And as you go into it, you're going to have to learn how to manipulate the data that is already in there, how to mimic or copy the procedures that have been in place prior to that time going forward, possibly making adjustments as you go forward, improvements as you go forward. That's a different scenario than a situation where you have to start an entirely new company file, because then you're putting this system in from scratch, for which the only way to practice is to have a sandbox that hasn't already been started so that you can do those baseline kind of procedures. That's when you would need kind of the 30-day trial because you want a clean setup. Again, we will do that clean setup in the second half of the course. The first half of the course looking at then the navigation process, which would be better done with data already in the system. So I point this out. Don't just jump there because we have a long course. If you're going from start to finish and you try to get a 30-day trial, then you won't have enough time to finish it in the long course. You want to start the 30-day trial right at the point when you're going to maximize the use if you're going line by line through the course. So that's the first thing to note. And also just remember that it's going to try to upsell you or sell you on the normal package by giving you a discounted price. So you have to be able to say, look, I don't want the normal package. I want the 30-day trial, and then make sure that you're not locking yourself in so that you could still use it as a legitimate trial period while still being in alignment with the terms and conditions of the trial period, so that after you're done with the trial, you can then hopefully, possibly make a different purchase or be able to purchase it at the discounted price, not at the elevated level after having taken advantage of the free 30-day months. Okay, we'll talk more about that later, but the other option, possibly, if you have the ability, is if you're a student, then you might be able to get access to a sandbox, basically QuickBooks Online, for a bit longer of a time period. Once again, the goal being to get one that doesn't have anything in it so that you can practice the setup process. Noting online is different than the desktop version, whereas in the old desktop version, with one purchase, whether it be a subscription model or the old model where you buy the software, it was kind of like Microsoft Word in that you can have multiple document files, in this case company files, with one purchase. With QuickBooks Online, you don't have that capacity. You only get one company file per subscription, per purchase, which makes it difficult to practice because that one company file might be your actual company file or your company file that you work for, that you have access to, which you don't want to mess up in order to practice things. Therefore, you need some other company file, ideally, to practice. The two types of company files you would like to practice with is one with nothing in it, so you can practice the startup process, and one that does have something in it, so that you can practice manipulating the data and reports. So if you have access to the student file, you might be able to get more than 30 days. That's the point. Why? Because most courses and whatnot are like for 60 days or 3 months, right? So you might get like a 90-day or 120-day trial instead of a 30-day, which would be really good, particularly for our course, because 30 days, even at the point of the course where we jump into the project, is not a whole lot of time. You gotta go through that quick to get through that time frame. All right, the other one is the free test drive. So the free test drive is the one that's available to everyone. So in this one, you can basically log in not to your account because you might not have an actual account. You might not have purchased QuickBooks at all. Then you still have access to the test drive, which has a sample company file in it. And that's great for practicing as though you're starting a job, for example, which already has the company file set up. Because if the company file is already set up, what do you need to do? You need to know how to generate reports. You need to know how to figure out what they have been doing in the past and then mirror that process with financial transactions going into the future. For that type of information, you would like data already in the system to practice the generation and manipulation of that data in the form of reports and adding data to it. So this is the part that we will use for the first half of the course, which is totally free. So I only mention the 30-day free trial now because I want you to know about it, but don't do the 30-day free trial if you're going to go through this course from start to finish until we get to the second half of the course, so you can maximize the time period of the free trial that has no data in it, so we can start from scratch if you want to do it that way. Now, obviously, the last method we can have is to have discounts if we're going to be purchasing the software. So possibly you might say, look, it's going to take me more than 30 days to practice the software. I don't have access to the student file. Then maybe it would be worthwhile to purchase the software and just hold on to it for a few months and then cancel it when you're going to cancel it if you want to do that, which might be what we do in the second half of the course here for our presentation purposes. So whether you did the 30-day free trial or whether you want to purchase the 30-day free trial or you want to purchase the software after having done the trial and you want to put your company data into it, then you might want to talk to an accountant because most accountants have access to QuickBooks is very popular. So many accountants might have some people, at least in their firm, that are affiliated with QuickBooks in some way and possibly be able to give some kind of discounts on it. Just remember, at the least, don't buy QuickBooks for the undiscounted price after the 30-day free trial, because it's going to be way more expensive than if you were to take the discount before the 30-day free trial, right? So if you do the free trial, you want to do the free trial and most likely not pay the advanced price after the trial, possibly talking to a accountant to get a discount after that time, or contacting QuickBooks, or basically doing another purchase so that you make sure that you get the lowest price possible and possibly any advantages of any other kind of discounts that you can at that point. But typically, the purchase is the last thing that you would want to do, and remembering the purchase is something that you would want to do for your actual data file that you're going to be putting in there versus the practice data, which you would like to get access to something that is a practice session separate from your actual data so you can actually practice in it.